She was a loving person, and she adored so dearly all of her grandchildren. She didn't deserve what was done to her. These were words spoken on a GoFundMe page set up for 64-year-old Elvia Lopez-Aroyo, who on November 2nd, 2023, inside of her own home, was viciously attacked by her 23-year-old grandson, Luis Aroyo-Lopez. Gustavo Aroyo-Lopez had just recently been released from state prison on violent assault charges. However, according to a neighbor, Elvia was excited to see her grandson. However, only shortly after, a friend of Elvia would go inside the house and come out screaming, saying, "No head, no head, no head." Soon, authorities would arrive and a manhunt would ensue for Luis Gustavo Aroyo-Lopez, who some would say was just a wannabe gangster.
A killer on the loose and a quiet neighborhood shaken tonight after Santa Rosa police made a gruesome discovery.
Yeah, that's a pretty horrific thing to happen anywhere, especially in your own neighborhood.
Around 3:40 p.m. yesterday, police responded to a 911 call about a possible homicide inside a home.
And when officers arrived, they did find a deceased adult female who had been decapitated.
But what was even more troubling was what officers didn't find.
Upon searching the residence, they were unable to locate the missing body part. They were able to identify a suspect and also believe that suspect left the residence with his relative's head.
Authorities are searching for this man, Luis Gustavo Aroyo-Lopez, a 24-year-old relative of the victim, who detectives say killed the woman, mutilated the body, and is now on the run. Police say Aroyo-Lopez was recently released from state prison after being incarcerated for assault and weapons charges. Some members of the Santa Rosa community say they are nervous, while others are still trying to make sense of a brutal crime.
It's a pretty quiet neighborhood, so I'm completely shocked.
Sarah Warenga lives in the neighborhood. She says she never saw anything suspicious at the victim's house.
I've never heard any yelling. I've never seen any violence. I just thought it was just a kind of a normal family household.
So horrific. It brings to mind acts of terrorism or perhaps the work of drug cartels. But this happened on an ordinary street in Santa Rosa where a woman in her 60s was found beheaded in her own home. Police think it was someone in her own family who did it. They say he's still on the run tonight. And what's even more disturbing, he may still have the victim's head with him. Our Andrea Nakano talked with a neighbor who might have witnessed the victim's final encounter with her killer.
This is a crime that has shocked this neighborhood. Many of the neighbors around here say that this is relatively a safe and quiet area. Now the question is, why did this happen? Jessica lives near the home where a Santa Rosa woman was found dead. She's concerned the suspect might return to the area and didn't want us to show her face.
I just can't believe anyone would do that to her.
Jessica says she saw Luis Aroyo-Lopez walking towards her neighbor's home around noon on Thursday.
He just walked at a normal pace, made an exact turn up their walkway, and knocked normally on the door. And I paused over here with my dog because I didn't know who this guy was, and just to make sure that my neighbor knew who he was.
She overheard the two talking, and nothing about the conversation alarmed her.
I heard them talking, and she was like surprised and happy. And I heard like the word "you," and they were just, talking back, and then the door closed, and I thought, oh, she knows the guy.
Then 3 hours later, Jessica heard a friend of the victim frantically running out of the house.
She kept yelling, "No head," and I wasn't sure what she meant.
The head of the victim was missing from the scene. Jessica says the victim's friend went in and out of the house looking for the head. Moments later, a family member arrived.
And the lady told me, my sister's not dead. My sister's dead.
Police say Aroyo-Lopez is a relative of the victim and just got out of prison after serving time for assault with a deadly weapon against someone else.
To have this kind of incident happen where someone was very recently released from prison to make the effort from Bakersfield to come directly to Santa Rosa with the apparent motive to just kill a family member is significant.
Neighbors are telling us Lopez is the grandson of the woman, but that has not been confirmed. Investigators want to know why this happened.
I know that we've been reaching out to CDC to see if there's any correspondence that they can help us out with that may give us a tip to why this is happening. And then we're working with the family to see if there's anything that been some sort of feud or something else that may have led to this violence.
It's like, how did he get in? Was she involved with sending him to jail? We don't know if this is revenge or just wacko.
Santa Rosa police say if you see this man, to call 911. They found a weapon inside the home, but still consider Lopez to be armed and dangerous. Gruesome story out of the North Bay. Police have arrested a man accused of decapitating a relative in Santa Rosa. The suspect is 24-year-old Luis Aroyo-Lopez. He was taken into custody today in San Francisco. Santa Rosa police have been searching for him since Thursday after officers responded to calls of a possible homicide on Pomo Trail. Police say they made a disturbing discovery there. They found a woman beheaded inside of her own home. Investigators believe the suspect may have ran off with the victim's head. Neighbors are in shock, saying this is a normally very quiet neighborhood. One resident we spoke to yesterday said they may have witnessed the final encounter between the victim and her killer.
I paused over here with my dog because I didn't know who this guy was, and just to make sure that my neighbor knew who he was. They were just, talking about it, and then the door closed, and I thought, oh, she knows the guy.
Police say Arroyo-Lopez was recently released from state prison for assault with a deadly weapon and weapon possession charges unrelated to this incident. Investigators have not disclosed whether or not the head has been recovered.
Elements in the search for answers in Sonoma County and a homicide there. The head of a decapitated woman has been located. Grizzly, I know, and we've learned that she was the grandmother of the suspect who is now under arrest. Santa Rosa police identified the victim as 64-year-old Elvia Lopez-Aroyo. Her body was found last Thursday in a house on Pomo Trail. The suspect was arrested Saturday in San Francisco. That same day, police found the victim's head on the bank of the Santa Rosa Creek. 23-year-old Luis Aroyo-Lopez has been charged with murder and is being held without bail. Just a shocking crime.
What's going on, you guys? Welcome back. Another episode of Green Lit Gang TV. Much love, much appreciation. Thank you guys so much for checking out the channel. We're going to be going to Santa Rosa, California with this. Now, I kind of like to give a little background information on some of the cities we cover, especially with California, because I do so many videos on California. So Santa Rosa is Spanish for St. Rose. It's a city and the county seat of Sonoma County in the North Bay region of the Bay Area in Cali. Its population, as of a couple years ago, is around 180,000. And it's actually the largest city in California's wine country and Redwood Coast. It's a beautiful, beautiful area. Just look it up. It's absolutely gorgeous. As much as I disagree with a lot of California's beliefs and their politics and certain things, one thing you cannot say, even those people that say I would never go there, oh my God, that state's falling apart. You cannot say it's not beautiful. It has so many different sites and just so many areas that are to check out. That's the best way to put it. Wine country in particular, it's just gorgeous. So, anyway, but on this day, November 2nd, 2023, it was anything but beautiful. What this gentleman by the name of Luis Aroyo-Lopez did was horrific. And it's kind of one of those, right when I read the headline, I stopped in my tracks. I was like, okay, well, I have to cover this. There's no way I can't do a video on this. So the incident took place on November 2nd, 2023. We're going to be reading from an article from November 3rd, 2023. Santa Rosa, a man recently released from prison is being sought after. A relative of his was found decapitated inside a Santa Rosa home, authorities said Friday. So the incident took place Thursday, November 2nd. Again, this is an article from Friday, November 3rd. All right. And for those of you that don't know what decapitated means, it means when one's head is completely removed off of their body. Santa Rosa police said officers responded Thursday at around 3:40 p.m. to the 2500 block of Pomo Trail, just south of West Steel Lane and west of Coffee Lane, about a possible homicide. Officers found the decapitated woman inside a home and her head was not located, police said. Investigators identified the suspect as 23-year-old Santa Rosa resident Luis Aroyo-Lopez, a relative of the victim. Police believe Aroyo-Lopez killed the victim at the home, took the victim's head with him when he fled, and may still be in possession of it. That's insane. And this one obviously sticks out. This one, the news story in particular, you can tell it's got a lot of views. Just when you use the word decapitated, a removal of a head, you put a mugshot up there, you've got the makings of a well-watched, a well-viewed news story for their YouTube channel. Okay. So neighbors are in shock after hearing about this brutal crime. It's like, duh. They say this is normally a very quiet neighborhood. This girl, who I don't blame her name was Jessica. She didn't want to give any more information than that. Who didn't give her last name, lives near the home where the woman was found dead. She's concerned the suspect might return to the area and didn't want to be identified on camera. I don't blame you, Jessica. I do not blame you for that. Jessica says she saw, and this is interesting, what she saw. Jessica says she saw Luis Gustavo Aroyo-Lopez walking toward her neighbor's home around noon on Thursday. Quote, he just walked a normal pace and made an exact turn up the walkway and knocked on the door. I paused over here with my dog just to make sure my neighbor knew who he was, Jessica said. Makes sense. When you live in a neighborhood, when you have elderly neighbors, you'd hope that you look out for one another, in particular, those that are older. You look out for them, make sure they're okay, especially a woman living alone. So Jessica was doing the right thing. She knew her neighbor was older. She knew she lived alone. She did the right thing. But she says she overheard the two talking, but nothing about the conversation alarmed her. Quote, she was surprised and happy, and I heard the word you. They were just, talking. And then the door closed, and I thought, phew, she knows the guy. 3 hours later, however, Jessica heard a friend of the victim frantically come busting out the front of the house, and she kept yelling, and I'm not joking, guys. She kept yelling, no head, no head, no head, no head. And I wasn't sure what she meant. Jessica went on to say that the victim's friend went in and out of the house looking for the head. It's just like, oh my God. Aroyo-Lopez, this is Gustavo, this is the grandson, is described as a Hispanic man, about 5'6" tall, about 150 pounds, with black hair and brown eyes. He has a large tattoo, 420, and a marijuana leaf on the left side of the head. For those of you that don't know, 420 is like the National Pot Smoking Day. It's it's a number that's associated with weed smoking. For those of you that don't know this, you know 420, April 20th, is also Hitler's birthday. Just thought I would throw that out there. Now, his grandmother, Elvia Lopez-Aroyo, she was, by all accounts, a wonderful woman, well-loved, well-liked, well-respected. And at this time, the article, they hadn't located him yet. But from the beginning, from the onset, from when the minute the neighbor, or the friend, I'm sorry, not the neighbor, not Jessica didn't find her, when the friend found her, family and friends immediately pointed at him as somebody that probably did this, right? That probably committed this. This is who you need to be looking for. And a bolo, be on the lookout, was put out for him. Okay, so it talked about, like we just said, the 420 and the marijuana leaf on the left side of his head. And it talked about how he was last seen wearing a long sleeve black hooded sweatshirt or jacket, black pants, and white shoes. And he was believed to have left walking south on Iroquois Street. And neighbors talked about how Lopez is the victim's grandson, but that wasn't confirmed at the time. Quote, I know we've been reaching out to California Department of Corrections to see if there's any correspondence that they can help us out with and give us a tip as to why this is happening. And we're working with the family to see if there's been some sort of feud or something else that may have led to this violence, Lieutenant Mahern said. Police said Aroyo-Lopez has other relatives in the San Joaquin Valley area, but it's unknown if that is his destination or what his current means of travels are. And interestingly enough, Aroyo-Lopez is on post-release community service. So basically community supervision. He's on parole after being recently released from state prison for assault with a deadly weapon and weapons possession, a case that was unrelated to the current one that this article was talking about, to the Pomo Trail victim. And yeah, that victim was Elvia Lopez-Aroyo, his grandmother. So Aroyo-Lopez gets out of prison for these assault and violent crimes. Within a few days, he shows up, murders his 64-year-old grandmother, decapitates her, and then flees. I'll be honest, when you see his mugshot, I look at a lot of mugshots every single day, and I feel like I'm getting pretty good at identifying drug addiction, which is very common in almost all of them. Not drug addiction, but somebody that's heavily abused substances. I feel like I can spot that right away. I feel like I can spot that's a that's a bad mother right there. That's I don't even want to say, maybe evil is the word. I don't know if there's some other words, but that's a person that's put in some work. That's a person that's got down. That's a person that's put in work for their gang, for their hood, whatever. But I can also, and I think in this case, Luis Gustavo Aroyo-Lopez fits this. He falls under this category: serious mental health issues. Looking at his mugshot, the lights don't seem to be on. It seems like nobody's home when I'm looking at his mugshot. That's the first thing that I think about when I see his mugshot. I go, oh yeah, he's not all there. That's just what I think. And I'm sorry, but to show up to your grandma's house a few days after you get released, no matter what you possibly could be mad at her about, if there is even a reason, no. To go to that lengths, it just doesn't make any sense. So he was supposed to check in that Thursday, the day of the murder, to his post-release community supervision. He doesn't. CDC's getting together, seeing if there's anything that's going on. He currently has an active homicide warrant out for his arrest and should be considered armed and dangerous, police said. If anyone sees him, they are urged not to contact him and to call 911. Officer Maron went on to say he's with the Santa Rosa Police Department, quote, to have this kind of incident happen where someone was very recently released from prison, to make the effort from Bakersfield to come directly to Santa Rosa with an apparent motive to kill a family member is significant. So yeah, that's the other part, that he drove from Bakersfield, went to Santa Rosa with the explicit intent, did not go anywhere else, did not do anything else, straight to his grandma's house. And I kind of feel like grandma, I mean, yes, she's older, but she's not old. She's not 84, 85, where she can walk out, say hi. She can tell if something's coming. Or I feel like she would at least know, like, oh, no, I know he's mad at me. He's been mad at me. He's threatened me. You're not coming in. But from what, Jessica said, the neighbor, when she was kind of stopping when she was walking her dog to listen in, sounded like everything was okay. Sounded like, oh yeah, there's recognition there. There's some talking, not a fear in her eye, not a you need to get out of here, not I'm calling the cops, get off my property, none of that. So, happened November 2nd. On November 6th, okay. No, I'm sorry. He got arrested November 4th. He got arrested, so November 2nd, Thursday, the incident happens. He was arrested Saturday, November 4th. This article is from the following Monday, all right? November 6th, 2023. But he's arrested Saturday, November 4th. Santa Rosa. Police in Santa Rosa on Monday released additional details regarding the horrifying case of a man recently released from state prison who allegedly decapitated his grandmother in her home last week and was arrested in San Francisco Saturday morning, all right? And that was, again, Saturday, November 4th. The bizarre and brutally violent case began on Thursday afternoon when Santa Rosa police were called to the 2500 block of Pomo Trail about a possible homicide. They got a call, and they arrived at around 3:40 in the afternoon to kind of put a timeline on it, okay? Arriving officers found a deceased adult female victim inside the residence who had been decapitated, authorities said. The victim's head was not located at the residence, and that's the other part. I'm just like, oh my God, he left with the head. He left with the head. That's just so off. It's so rarely do you see these. Police have now identified the victim. And because remember, I read an article that was just fresh. They're looking for this guy. This is on the lookout. They hadn't even released the homicide victim's name, but that's why I already told you guys the name, because I want you guys to try to have as much information as possible. But I do try to do this in a chronological order. Police have now identified the victim as 64-year-old Santa Rosa resident Elvia Lopez-Aroyo. When authorities first released information on the case, they confirmed that investigators identified the suspect as Santa Rosa resident Luis Gustavo Aroyo-Lopez, a blood relative of the victim who was on post-release community supervision after he was recently released from state prison for assault with a deadly weapon and weapons possession. Police said that the suspect had killed the victim in a targeted attack. So then that's what they ended up determining after a few days. And then after his arrest, it was a well-intentioned attack. It wasn't in the heat of the moment. It wasn't like he showed up to greet his grandma, maybe asked for money, asked her a question, didn't like the answer, or confronted her about something, didn't like the answer. In the heat of the moment and passion, he attacked her and killed her. No, went from Bakersfield, showed up, I'm killing her. And then, for whatever reason, felt like he had to remove her head. But, yeah, there's a big difference in that. And there's a big difference in how they'll charge those crimes. the heat of the moment in a passion crime, you can get something as low as manslaughter or like a second or third degree murder charge. If it's he went from Bakersfield, California to Santa Rosa, California with an intent, a premeditated plan, it's first degree, life without parole, or possibly, well, they don't do the death penalty anymore, but you get what I'm saying. All right, and Monday's update on the case. Police also said that Aroyo-Lopez was 23 years old, not 24 as previously reported. I always said he was 23 because I had read through this before, and that was the victim's grandson. So they're basically, in this article, they're giving you a little more information, and then they're going to verify everything that was speculated. Police also noted that multiple weapons were recovered from the residence, but said, quote, said items will need to undergo further examination before authorities can definitely identify the murder weapons. Police additionally confirmed that Aroyo-Lopez was taken into custody Saturday morning after an alert San Francisco police officer spotted Aroyo-Lopez in the area of the Trans-Bay Transit Center at 425 Mission Street and recognized him from the wanted person bulletins. He immediately detained Aroyo-Lopez without incident. The suspect was detained in San Francisco until Santa Rosa police detectives were able to transport him to the Sonoma County Main Adult Detention Facility. Aroyo-Lopez has been booked on charges of murder and violating his post-release, community supervision. Aroyo-Lopez was not given bail. I feel like that's like the biggest duh. I just feel like, of course, you're not going to get bail, man. You took your grandma's head off. After the suspect was arrested, Santa Rosa police continued their search for the victim's decapitated head at approximately 7:30 p.m. And I put pictures up of the place of where they found it. The head was found on the south bank of the Santa Rosa Creek near the Prince Memorial Greenway. I put up 2 pictures of that place. The head was brought to the Sonoma County Coroner's Office for further examination. Kind of wrap this up, put a bow on it. So crimes are committed early November 2nd, specifically 2023. He's arrested November 4th. He ended up going to court and pleading initially November 27th. And then he enters a plea November 27th of 23. And then we fast forward about 8 months to June 4th, 2024. He pled guilty. And by this time, he's a little bit older. And I think they're getting their ages mixed up here because this article says he's 25. I think he's 20. I know he's 24 because it's only 8 months have passed. So a 24-year-old man will likely spend at least the next 26 years in prison for decapitating his grandmother last year at her Santa Rosa homes, days before he was arrested in San Francisco. Luis Gustavo Aroyo-Lopez sat silently Thursday in a Sonoma County courtroom in Santa Rosa as his relatives shared prepared statements with the judge about the damage and pain the family had suffered as a result of his brutal actions. He pleaded guilty to murder on June 4th after reaching an agreement with prosecutors. Exactly why Luis Aroyo-Lopez killed his grandmother, Elvia Aroyo-Lopez, has never been discussed in open court. Several relatives stressed Thursday that he has always wanted to be a gangster, quote, but was actually a coward, as evidenced by his actions on November 2nd. What he did has left the family very hurt, the victim's daughter-in-law, Gabriela Mejia, said in court Thursday, quote, we ask for justice because what he did was inhumane. That is to say the least. Statements were read before Judge Vernon Nakahara, who sentenced Luis Aroyo-Lopez to a maximum life in prison. He'll have to serve 25 years in prison before being considered for possible parole, officials said. He also was sentenced to an additional 6 years in prison after also pleading guilty to battery on a Sonoma County Corrections deputy while in jail on, Christmas Eve. His sentences will be served consecutively, so that means he's got to do the minimum of 25. If he does get parole or anything like that, then the 6-year sentence will start for the abuse or attack on the corrections officer. In a statement read in court Thursday by his defense attorney, Nate Raff, with the County Public Defender's Office, Luis Aroyo-Lopez apologized to his relatives and expressed remorse for the killing. I'm so sorry for all the pain I caused you. What I did was unforgivable, Raff read. Nonetheless, Nakahara said while closing proceedings Thursday, quote, it's hard for a victim's family to get closure. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Family members told the press Democrat Elvia Lopez-Aroyo had 6 children, 32 grandchildren, and 18 great-grandchildren. This is why I like to read this. I know some of this stuff you guys was covered in the news stories that you watch, but a lot of this isn't. And this is why I like to talk at the end, because I like to really try to fill in the holes. And I spend a lot of time really trying to pick up information to kind of, bring it all together. They described her as a devoted Christian who enjoyed cooking and gardening and was always a positive motivator. And I like this too because it makes Elvia more of a person when you hear her kids, her grandchildren, her great-grandchildren, her hobbies, what she liked to do, all these people that talk about how much she loved her, because we all have grandparents, or we've all had grandparents if they've passed on. And you remember the times you had with them. You remember grandparents are different, man. Grandparents are the ones that spoil you, treat you great. You know, you're excited to go to their house for holidays, whatever it is. So cooking and gardening was always a positive motivator. They said Luis Aroyo-Lopez's parents were out of the picture and the victim was essentially his mother. That's crazy. So she raised him. One of her granddaughters, Maribel Maldonado, 30, said the killing was especially painful because it was committed by a family member. It occurred the day after, and let's see, this is another part. It occurred the day after, so not a few days, the day after he had been released from state prison where he served time for those assaults and the deadly weapon and the weapons possession charges. God, that's crazy. A day after he gets out. So something happened. Something snapped in this guy where he gets out with he's on a mission. On November 2nd, he was supposed to check in with the probation department, but did not. And then they found her at her home after the neighbor and the friend and everything. He talks about how they put on a disappearance, how they arrested him 2 days later at the Transbay Transit Center in San Francisco, how they ended up fighting in the head. But yeah, my takeaways from this are he was extremely mentally ill. That's not an excuse at all. He deserves what he got. Probably should have got longer, no parole. But it's just there. It's just obvious. In those pictures of him, that front-on picture where he's kind of looking with his head cocked, I don't see a vicious gang member. I don't see a violent, he's very violent, but not the kind of violent where he's just not all there. It's just different. You guys know what I'm talking about if you're looking at that picture. Like the lights are not on, which almost makes him more dangerous. I mean, he gets arrested, and within a month and a half on Christmas Eve, he's attacking a corrections officer. He does time for violent, crimes. He gets out the next day, kills his grandma, beheads her. They find a bunch of weapons. He obviously has a penchant for violence and weapons in particular, he's, guns, whatever he's doing. But my biggest takeaway from this is mental health, drug addiction, all that. And drug addiction absolutely can lead to a deterioration of mental health. I was affected by it for a long time. I got a lot of friends, family members that are. I know guys that are never going to come back fully from their drug addiction. And they wear the scars of living that life. They'll wear it forever. But this guy needs serious medication. He needs medication. That's not anything but that. And as far as the gang ties, I couldn't find a particular gang. I couldn't find anything past that. I mean, he's affiliated. He ran with somebody because he went off to state prison. The family wouldn't say he was a wannabe gangster for no reason. But I even feel like they would look at him and go, man, there's something wrong with this guy. Something's off. So they probably, if they did let him run around or let him hang out or associate, I'm sure it was kind of at an arm's length sort of a thing. I definitely don't see him rising through the ranks or anything like that because his crime is so weird. It made the news. You took your grandma's head off. Some of the baddest dudes in the state and federal prison, some of the baddest gangsters, they love their grandma. They love their grandpa. They love their mom and dad, especially because she raised him. That's the part that gets me. When I read that his parents were in the picture and she raised him. So this isn't some lady that he saw 2-3 times a year. No, this was his mom. So yeah, anyway, hope you guys enjoyed it. Much love, much appreciation. And until next time, you already know what it is, guys. Peace.